What is up, everybody? Run Pure Sports NBA Hardwood Show. We are back. We only got a couple days till the NBA All-Star break, but hey, we're back with some winners here with Bryce, third and Schlong, after a big $100,000 win last night. So congrats to you. And then here with Big T, back from Vegas. So I'm sure we got a lot to talk about to kick it off from the top. But Big T, I know you had fun in Vegas, but we can't go to you first. We got to go to the man who just won, six figures yesterday. So Bryce, how was the sweat yesterday, and how is it going over?
The sweat was super unenjoyable because when I swapped all my teams, it swapped Draymond and Josh Green to Pods and Aldama, and I ended up liking the Pods and Aldama side more, so I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to stay on Pods and Aldama, and they combined for 3 fantasy points in the second half, like total. So I was like, if I swapped off 100K here, I'm going to be pissed. Ended up winning by like 6 points, but it made it way closer of a sweat than I wanted it to be because, like, after the Toronto game, like, I had like a 30-point lead, and it was basically just people trying to catch me the rest of the night because, like, I got Wemby at 4%. We talked about that on the show. And, yeah, I mean, when he goes for 10 blocks on FanDuel, like, you're not going to beat that. Like, even, like, Giannis had a full nut game and still didn't catch him for more money.
Yeah, you're definitely not catching that with Wemby. And I mean, we've talked about it, Big T, right? Wemby and like the nukes coming soon. And it happened yesterday. I had a lot of exposure to him. I didn't have I had a lot of good pieces, not on the right teams is the only downside, but I had a good night overall. I can't complain. But Big T, how was Vegas? Tell the people a little bit about that, because I'm sure you had an enjoyable trip besides obviously the Niners losing. But hey, I'm sure it was still a good time.
Yeah, honestly, I gambled less than I usually do just because we had all the events, and I was trying to milk all the freebies. We had nice dinners, bunch of events. The LeBron party was the highlight for me. Obviously, being a LeBron guy forever, it was cool to not like you're sitting there like talking to him all night, but he's hanging out right there, and just fun to hang out in that environment and have some drinks, get after it a little bit. And honestly, like since we've started Run Pure 4 years ago, I don't think I've taken 3 or 4 days like that where I didn't, because you can't play in Vegas. So I just didn't play that much, honestly. And I haven't done that in like 4 years. So honestly, it was like relaxing to only have the football slate. I did the MMA slate, really the only 2 things I did while I was there. So it was literally just hang out with the wife, drink, party, and have a good time. So it was awesome. In the game, I mean, the game was fun, but it was the least of – I like watching football on TV, honestly. I like sitting there watching it, seeing the replays, all that stuff. I mean, if I could have sold the tickets to the game, I would have probably – I'm glad I went now because it was a fun experience. And, like, that last touchdown was right in front of us. We were in the San Francisco end zone. So it was a fun time. Definitely one that I'll remember forever.
He picked a good one to go to, and also our guy DC took down the 150K, so that was
I've
awesome.
seen the prize pull on that thing, by the way. That was a sick hit. It was 150, and it was like 20K or something per second.
That's
like,
why he
was
was
a legendary takedown.
That's why he was sweating it so hard. He was like, it's a brutal,
25K or something for second place. That is absurd.
And he was basically guaranteed first or second, but that's a 125K difference.
Massive. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. I was like,
plus, I didn't realize what a grind playing that tournament was, like, all throughout the postseason. Like, I had no idea, like, what went into those type of contests because, honestly, I had never looked at them before.
What did he have to do?
It's like you have to, like, you get so many adds and drops each week based on, like, what you want to do with your team. So it's like you're kind of, like, towards the end betting on who's going to, like, win and make the Super Bowl. So it's like kind of like drafting a best ball team, but you can switch your team up.
You can switch it.
Yeah, I think he had like 20. He had like 21 adds and drops throughout the playoffs. So like,
I know there was a lot of.
What did he need what did he need in the Super Bowl to get him home?
He needed Kelsey to not go nuts,
then he needed
the Chiefs to win.
And he needed Pacheco to do like well too. Like he had a 4x multiplier on Pacheco, and like that was like one of his bigger things that could have been really valuable for him. So. That was a big aspect as well. But overall, it was good to see him take that down. Bryce took down 100K recently. We had a member, Brittany, take down 100K recently. So things are flowing over here at Run Pure Sports. But,
I've seen a couple people took down some Qs, too, while I was gone. So that's always good, too.
Yeah, we got one of our members took down the DraftKings qualifier, so I'll be seeing him out in Arizona in a couple weeks. I think that's coming up like a month from now, March 23rd. So yeah, month and a week.
Yeah. Also, there's if you guys are someone that likes to qualify for Qs, I think it's still up. There's $60 Qs today, which listen, $60 Qs are more affordable than some of these 300 or you see the $4,000 ones. So that's something you want to get into. Get into it. It's definitely
those are perfect ones for people to take stabs at too. Because everyone doesn't have the same bankrolls and stuff like that, but these finals are great experiences to go to. And like our boy Travis just said, you can't take stabs at some of them. I mean, 5,000, even 300, 500, all the different amounts. $60 though, even if you're a smaller bankroll player, take a few stabs in those. You won't regret it if you win, I promise you. Like if you get in there and win off that, you're going to be happy you played it. And you know what? If you lose, I mean, it's still a winner-take-all format for the most part. Who cares? Chalk it up as a bad night of DFS or something. Like take some stabs at those.
Yeah, I threw a couple in, so I'll be in there for sure. Excited to talk about this slate. We got the big Ant Edwards news just came across the timeline. He is questionable. That happened probably right as we came on the show. So that's a big piece of news that we'll break down when we get to that game. But let me tell you, that is a very big piece of news. And this is a very
downgrade, or is that what is that?
It's a downgrade.
Downgrade, but I don't know. Ant plays a lot. I'm not it is Portland, so that's another thing to keep in mind. It's the second day of a back-to-back. They just played the Clippers yesterday, so
makes me think he's going to sit, but I'm obviously not in rhythm like you guys are.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say he's for sure going to sit, but you lean that, right? Like if you told me to put a wager on and it's there's no vig, I would definitely wager he sits, but
it's going to be a big point of the slate, like you just said, though, because they're playing Portland, and these prices of these other guys are so cheap versus Portland.
It's not just that. It's an 8:00 game. So not 8:00. Sorry, it's a 10:00 game. I was thinking Mountain Time. This is one of those slates, Tonys, that we have two 7:30 games, an 8:00 game, and then Minnesota Portland starts at 10. Sacramento Phoenix is at 10, and then Detroit and LA is at 10:30. We kind of have an old school slate. Recently, we've had a more condensed. So it's a little bit of a different slate than we've been accustomed to lately. And if you remember, the night that Brittany won that big 100K, it was a very much backloaded team where people were locked out of those Pistons players. Now, I don't think people are going to be necessarily locked out of all their players, but Miami is one of the bigger talking points on this slate because they're out a bunch of guys. And we'll obviously get to each game, but because they're missing Terry Rozier, they're missing Jimmy Butler, Duncan Robinson's questionable, Richardson is out. Because all those guys are missing, this is a night where a lot of people are going to play Miami options. So you might get locked out of some of these Minnesota plays in a way. So something to think about on this slate for sure. That's a little bit of an overview before we dive into it all. But let's go game by game. Again, 7:30 lock time. So you have a little bit of a 30-minute buffer. So that's we got time if we,
we're going to be on playback tonight too for whoever likes free content. So before that 10 o'clock, before the 10 o'clock, 10:30 games start, we'll be on playback tonight, breaking down the news, talking about the 3-gamer late slate too. So if you want to wait and monitor news, we'll be on, and it's free to hang out and watch with us later, have a drink, pick some late winners.
Yep. So check that out on playback. It should be a good time. We'll be on the YouTube stream as well, Big T.
Yeah, I think it should be that way every time now. I believe so, at least. That's more of a Rubio question. I think so.
I think it is too, because I noticed the other day.
It was sweet too, like you said the other day, because it has the scoreboard up there too when you're watching it, and even if you don't have League Pass, you can follow along with the score at least.
Yep, it's a pretty cool concept. So check that out today. And if you want to check it out and you want to get notified when it goes live, subscribe to the channel and also like the video. We appreciate it here. But again, let's dive in. Boston-Brooklyn is the first game up, and this is not a game I think we are dying to get to on this slate, but there are options to look at. We do have Kristaps Porzingis is questionable, and if Porzingis misses, well, that'll make things interesting in the front court for the Boston Celtics, and we'd have to consider some of these options. And I think even if Porzingis played, you could consider a Jason Tatum, right, as they spend up. Derek White at 6'3", there's upside at the price, and if Porzingis sat, well, they traded for Xavier Tillman. Xavier Tillman is still out. Al Horford would clearly be the big man, and who knows if randomly Luke Cornett would get some more run too. So a lot to discuss here if Porzingis is out. So Bryce, I'll go to you first. How do you want to handle this Boston Celtics and Brooklyn Nets? Because it's not one of the best games on the slate, but it could obviously get intriguing if Porzingis got ruled out.
This game's way more intriguing to me if Porzingis is out. There's a huge lack of value on the slate, especially if like Ant ends up playing and like say you're playing all the cheap guys late, like you can switch around your teams and whatnot. But if he's out, I think Horford becomes a good play. Like obviously all the Boston bigs. Like if Kornet were to get to start, I'd probably play a ton of Kornet. He's just a really good fantasy point per minute guy, and he's all the way down there at like 3K. I think it would also help like some of the small ball lineups that you can play against Brooklyn because they will go small. So like Pritchard and Hauser would become like viable plays. And then it just kind of helps everyone on Boston because they have so many studs. It's like just taking away a high usage guy from them would obviously help Al Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Derrick Rose, etc. So, yeah, if they're fully healthy, I don't think Boston's like my favorite spot here. I will say 6.3K for Derrick White seems super cheap regardless of if Porzingis is in. But, it's not like I'm dying to play any of the Boston guys. And, you could even say I even go a little bit further on Brooklyn. Boston's just such a brutal matchup, like defensively, that, I think some of these Brooklyn guys could struggle here. I'd probably prefer – I'm always a sucker for Cam Thomas because he's going to put up 30 shots every game no matter who he has on him. But that would probably be my preferred Brooklyn play. So, yeah, not my favorite game in general.
Yeah, definitely not a great game, but I don't know, it could get interesting. And I see someone in the chat said Derrick White gets a bump if Porzingis is out, and I agree. I think he does get a bump, but keep in mind, I don't know. I definitely someone that's considering backloading a little bit on this slate, wanting to get exposure to Miami, but that means some of these early plays they will be low owned. So Big T, we see Big T 777 out in front. Will you be playing all these early guys, or how are you going to allocate it out? Because I don't know. I don't think it's a bad night to maybe get some exposure to early stuff, maybe wait, or even fully backload. It's going to be an interesting slate, but how do you handle this Brooklyn and Boston game?
Yeah, I lean backload just originally. Like I said, with the downgrade to Ant Edwards, I think he sits. Our boy Landa in the chat said the line already dropped a point too. So I kind of think he sits, which means I hope they don't announce it until after the 8 o'clock tip just to keep the owner. It happened perfectly for Brittany then, like you said. I mean, no one when that slate started except for Kay Fallick, who loved the Detroit values, no one liked it. And then the minute all those guys, I should say JSU on up to lock too, because he definitely got people on there. So I didn't want to slight him from saying that too. But all the news fell into the perfect category. And then those plays were the best plays on the slate, and they were all low owned because of people playing guys early. And what happens a lot of times is kind of what Mangone said, where people will play 3, 4, 5 guys early, and they'll save 3 spots for late, and they'll kind of filter a few guys in there. But you're still limited when it's like that because so many of those guys are really good plays. I mean, like Minnesota, once Ant gets rolled out, if he does, I mean, it's a slate. You could play 5 of those guys. I mean, they are going to crush Portland at those prices. So it's going to open the entire slate. And I want all my options unless plays are just must plays early, which in this game, I mean, if Porzingis is in, I mean, I think this game is just an easy fade for me, at least, just full fade. If he's out, I think you have to consider like Derrick White at 6,300. I agree with everyone that was saying that in the chat and you guys. He's just a great play at that price. I don't like him as much if Porzingis is in, but if he's out, I love it. You can always play Tatum. I mean, even with Brittany, she had Miles Bridges and someone else early that nuked. So you can still have guys with upside in the early. Like if somehow, like Schlong said, if Kornet somehow started, obviously you're going to play him if Porzingis is out and he starts. He's 3,200. So stuff like that. You can play a couple guys early. I'm not saying it's got to be a full roster late, but I don't want that many guys early. And I just don't see anything. I mean, yeah, the Brooklyn side, Cam Thomas, I tweeted a few times last week. I think he's literally like the worst player in the NBA, but he's also a good fantasy guy because he shoots the ball 30 times a game, like Schlong said. I mean, the dude chucks. He absolutely sucks at real life basketball, but fantasy is all we care about. So it's almost better if he sucks. Just launch that ball up there and get as many shots as possible. So he would be the guy with upside because he can have all he's got to do is make some shots and he's going to have 50 fantasy points. So he's always in play for me, but none of these other guys are even – I don't see anyone that's even remotely – I guess like Jalen Wilson or something if you needed a cheap guy, but I don't see a reason to do that. If Ant Edwards plays, I mean, Minnesota still only has 9 guys projected right now. So it's not like they're deep even if he plays. So I'm still more backloaded no matter what. Porzingis is in. I'm going to full fade this game.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, and I want to talk about this in the chat. So Andrew says Cade getting ruled out was an important thing to know, but I guess it being the last game had too much risk for people. There's going to be a similar situation today where if you look at projections right now, Jaime Jaquez Jr., however you say his name, Jamie, Jaime, whatever his name is, he's the number one play on the slate, right? Everyone's playing him. Tyler Hero, he's going to be a guy that everyone's loading up on. Bam Adebayo, he's going to have a lot of ownership. Duncan Robinson, if he's rolled in, people are going to go to him. People are going to look at Kevin Love, Haywood Heisman. People are locking themselves into heat options, like Big T said. It won't give you as much flexibility. So that is something that's just worth mentioning when building out your lineups. Not saying that these heat are bad plays, but think about that. Maybe you only play 1 or 2 heat. I think a lot of teams are going to have a ton of heat options.
This is another point, though, with the late news. It's not as simple as that, though, Mark. Yeah, that part is easy, but that's not even what we're even talking about. It's more that right now, if he's in, you only want probably 1 or 2 guys from there. But if he's out, I mean, I want 4 or 5 Minnesota guys if he's out. I do. Like, you're going to have to at these prices. There's no way you're not.
Yeah,
you'd get like slow-mo. I mean, we don't need to cover the game now, but you'd get like slow-mo and like Walker and McDaniels.
3,300.
Yeah, Walker and McDaniels. It's like just a full stack almost. You could run it back. And, the nice thing about this one compared to the Detroit situation is that, you have options regardless because you got 3 games. Like, it's more like don't put all your outlay out there early. Like, still keep some early players in. Just don't completely blow your wad at 7:30.
Yep.
Yeah, and a couple things. So let me go to Trevor Bryan first. Clue me in. Why are the Heat guys the talk? Well, they're missing Jimmy Butler, Terry Rozier, Josh Richardson, right? That's a lot of guys that they are missing, and there's good price tags there. So that's one thing to mention. Then the next thing is, Tony, explain this. Mango, can't you lock the Heat and leave 3 spots later for Minnesota? You've already talked about this.
That's literally what I said. Yeah, you're not leaving enough. In my opinion, you're not leaving enough. I just believe, they're playing Portland, Minnesota. And like the other dude in chat said, McDaniels is even questionable. So it could be the exact Detroit spot where Ant and McDaniels somehow miss. And then all of a sudden, you got Monte Morris at 3K, Slow-Mo 34, Nah 33, Naz Reid 42, even Conley 5K. Conley's been pretty good this year. So, and that's not even mentioning Gobert and Towns. Every dude on Minnesota is going to be a great play if those guys get ruled out.
Yeah, and
everyone's going to have 3 spots, right? Like a lot of the normal build will be 3 guys late and kind of mix and match like that. So you're not gaining anything on the field.
Yeah, but so back to this point, so you want more than 3 spots. The point Tony's getting at and why Brittany crushed the other day was she just ignored the first game. Now, I'm not saying ignore the Heat completely, but it's just there is some value you can gain from it, and it could go the other way. Also, Scoot Henderson is.
You're not totally dead if it goes the other way too, though. If they play, you still got 3 games to choose from.
Yeah, so it's just a very interesting slate. So, and I know we've kind of gone a little all over the place so far, but it's just a really good dynamic to the slate that I think is worth kind of calling out. Conley, they're saying, is also questionable too.
It makes it everybody questionable. It just strengthens the point. The more guys that are out for Minnesota, the better those plays are. They're going to be locks. What if somehow all 3 of them missed or something? You're going to pound everyone that played early guys.
Yeah, I also don't see Conley questionable unless that happened really.
I didn't see it either, but a few of them said that, so it definitely is probably true. But either way, it doesn't change the point of anything we're saying.
Yeah, but So we'll get to the Minnesota game. I know we've gone all over the place. Let's go to OKC and Orlando and talk about that. Obviously, SGA is a great play, especially if we have a lot of value to get to, right? Especially if you want to get those Minnesota value options. So SGA is there as a pretty good play for sure. I think they're still not – again, Gordon Hayward is still not there, so that's going to be a weird dynamic when he jumps in the mix. We'll see how that affects everything. But for the most part, they're healthy, and Orlando's not a team we typically love to target. On the Orlando side of the ball, obviously not the easiest game. You can go to a Paolo Banchero. I think you could go to a Franz Wagner. Do you want to lock into those guys? They're going to be low owned. I think they have ceilings, but it's definitely a risky spot. A Jalen Suggs at 4.6. I think it grades out as an okay value, but once all that news comes in, if it goes the way that you are hoping if you backload it, well, then Jalen Suggs is a way worse value play than some of these other guys that we have talked about in that Minnesota game. So, Bryce, is this a game to stay away from, or are you going to take some stabs here?
I don't ever really completely stay away from games just because, SGA can break the slate anytime he comes out. It's not a game I'm going heavy at. But I'm kind of taking an approach like I am with the first one, like try and pick and choose some guys that you'll be heavier on. I think in the first game for me, I think it was Tatum and Derek White would be my two guys, and a Cam Thomas. Here it would probably be SGA. I don't hate Chet, to be honest. He's down to 7.4. I don't think he's the worst play. I think Suggs is a decent value play. And then I'll have a bit of Banchero and Franz. I don't love Jalen Williams or Giddey in this spot. Giddey, I struggle to play him because he doesn't really have the minutes upside to get you into a huge score that you need. And it's not like you need an insane score at 5.7, but if you're only playing mid-20s minutes, no matter what, it's kind of hard to get there. So yeah, just kind of picking and choosing some guys from this game and moving on. Not really my favorite spot once again.
All right, one thing to mention, people are claiming that Conley usually sits back-to-backs. He's played 3 back-to-backs this year. I don't know how many they've had, but he played one in mid-January. So unless you actually see a Q tag, I'm just not buying it completely.
And again, I hate to harp on the point that we're making, but it doesn't. That news doesn't matter at the start of the slate. It just doesn't to me. If he plays, he plays. If he doesn't, you have pivots. There's 3 late games that you can pick. I don't even waste a single second even thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm just stating, I don't even see the news on it. So if you actually have legitimate news on it, please let me know. If it's just he sits on back-to-backs, well, he's played 3 this year. So, I don't buy it that much. Big T, I'll go over to you. What do you think of Orlando and OKC? It's definitely, not the worst game, but I think you can make a case it's similar to that Boston and Brooklyn game if we get news that goes our way. I would like some guys in this game if we didn't get the news to go our way, but that's something else to kind of think about. Because I think SGA is a great spend. I think you can make a case for some of these expensive guys.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of the stuff Schlong said, and it kind of jives with what JSU said on the up to lock that led to Brittany winning that 100K, where she had Miles Bridges and one other, I can't remember who the other early guy was that night, but 2 Charlotte pieces, and they both smashed. So the same example is to play a SGA or a Paulo or a Franz, and maybe you get 60 from Paulo or something. And then when you got those 2 early crushers, and then you're sitting on the news, that's when it all comes together and you got that 100K upside when you pair it together like that. So I agree with basically everything Schlong said, where I definitely don't want to go crazy, just like the first game. I don't like a ton. But if you end up playing just say you played SGA, Paolo, and you're assuming maybe we get the news, you got a ton of cheapies you can play late. If both those guys get you 60 or 50, 60 early, yeah, Cody Martin, Jordan said, yeah, Cody Martin the other night. So, it's a similar example. And I know some of the chat was talking about Jonathan Isaac. He was a stud a few years ago. I think he tore his knee out both the back-to-back years. I don't know if it was the same knee, different knees, whatever with that. But, yep. What you got?
I like Isaac. I totally missed him on the sheet.
And he got bumped. I don't know if it was OT the other day. Again, I've been out of the loop a little bit in Vegas, but he went from 19 minutes to 25. 2 games before that, he went 20, 21. So I think he's safe around the 20-minute mark. And if he's around the 20-minute mark at this price, 3,400, he's a perfect example. I figured that was overtime. So,
yeah,
but that's still a 20-minute mark, which is good for him. And I just think a guy like that at that price, we've talked about it for years on these shows. The difference between a 4K guy, 4,300 and 3,400 is a lot more than people think. 25% less salary. You just don't need as much. I mean, when you play Jonathan Isaac at 3,400, if he gets you 15, you're not happy, but you're not dead. If he gets you like 25, you're just massive. Whereas at the 4K, which also feels cheap, you need like up in the 30s. A little 22 spot doesn't help you as much. So I like Jonathan Isaac, Suggs. I think Orlando's somewhat sneaky on this slate. Obviously, I'm not going to play more than probably one or two of them, but I definitely think you could see the winner of this slate playing one or two guys from this game.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. You can definitely see some options here. And the Jonathan Isaac thing is a good call. Just depends what you think of some of this later news. And do you want to take a stab at one of those values or not? So something definitely to think about. Let's go to Miami and Milwaukee. It's definitely a really good game to discuss. We got to figure out how to handle Miami, though. And I know someone in the chat said some of these prices got raised, but did they get raised enough for no Terry Rozier, no Jimmy Butler, no Josh Richardson? And yeah, Bam's price went up. Tyler Hero's price went up $400. Is that enough with Jimmy out? No, it's not. These are good plays, especially against a Milwaukee team that struggles against guards. I mean, Tyler Hero also is a Milwaukee guy. I know he absolutely loves Milwaukee. So, of course, he'll probably, a little narrative there, he'll probably want to play pretty well there. He said he was buying Damian Lillard's Milwaukee jersey. That's how much he likes the Milwaukee Bucks in general. So, I think there are good plays here. I mean, Caleb Martin at 5K, Jacquez Jr. at 4.5. They're all good plays. Even Duncan Robinson, if he happens to play, Milwaukee doesn't cover the 3 well. He could easily play well at 4.2, and he's guard and forward eligible. Kevin Love, I know I'm not a big Kevin Love guy, but he can produce in those minutes like a Jonathan Isaac, right? He's just a good fantasy point per minute producer. So, Bryce, the big question is, how many Heat are too many Heat, and are you looking at any Milwaukee runbacks here?
Yeah, I don't mind the Milwaukee runbacks. For the purposes of this show, we're just going to assume that Giannis and Dame are going to play. If they were to sit, then that would open up a ton of Milwaukee value here. But yeah, I don't mind them as runbacks. You saw Giannis put up an absolutely monster game last night against Tony's Nuggets, and he only played 30 minutes and had 80 fantasy points. It was something absurd. No one had him. I think people will play him on this slate just because the value isn't it's getting better throughout the day. Especially if we were to get this Ant news earlier, I think a lot more people would be on Giannis than if we don't get the Ant news. So that's something to look out for. Dame is someone I don't think anyone is going to touch on this slate if you want to be different. And then, don't love the Milwaukee value guys. I think my favorite one would probably be a Jay Crowder, and that's not really something I'd rather do. I'd rather just play Jaquez straight up. Jaquez screwed a lot of people out when he came out last time. He's the type of play that I really like to play on FanDuel, where he's he has the upside, and he's clearly overpriced on FanDuel and underpriced on DraftKings, kind of like the Wemby situation yesterday, where he's 4.6 on DraftKings and he's 6K on FanDuel. So it's kind of Scottie Pippen yesterday too. He was 4K on DraftKings and 6K on FanDuel. Just the pricing differences, if he's a lock at 4K, he's still a decent play at 6K. I know Pippen didn't get there yesterday, but partly because that's because he was hurt. So that's something to look out for. But yeah, I mean, as Travis said earlier in his Miami breakdown, these guys are just too cheap. I think a good way to do it, especially if you want to leave spots for later, if you're in SaberSim, you can just make a group and limit to 2 or 3 max. So that guarantees that you're not going to be too overweight on any of the Miami pieces. Say you don't like Miami as much as the field, just limit 2 max on them. And then you'll be basically guaranteed to have enough salary and spots to do whatever you want later with the news. So I kind of like all of them. It's not there's not a single Miami player that I'm really gonna go out on a limb and say, oh, you got to play this guy. It's more game theory, macro how you're playing the slate with how many you would limit it to. I think I currently have it limited to 3 Miami. But, if you wanted to take a more aggressive stand, you could go 2. If you really like Miami, you could go 4. 5, I think, is too many here, no matter what.
Agree. The sweet spot number is, I think, 2 to 4. If you're, at least I thought that before the show. I think you could argue more 1 to 4 right now, but they're good plays. They're obviously plays you don't want to ignore here. You could even make the case that maybe the expensive guys are kind of interesting just because if Minnesota does lose Ant Edwards, well, there's a lot of good values that might pop up on the Minnesota side of the ball. Big T, talk about this Miami-Milwaukee game because this game locks 30 minutes after the first lock time, and it's 2 hours before that next set of games. You're probably not going to get the Ant Edwards news, so you're going to have to make a decision early, and this is something you guys will sure you'll get news on in the Up the Lock. JSU will talk about how he's going to handle it. Curious, Big T, how you're going to handle this situation.
Yeah, I've kind of been in line with you guys a lot the first 2 games. I just don't like Miami as much as you guys. I still think they're going to play a decent amount of guys. And I like the prices. Like, I like Kevin Love's price. I like Highsmith's price. I like Jaquez's price. I just don't know if I like upside based on their prices as much. Like, I feel like Kevin Love's like a lock to get like 18, which is good for 3,600. I just don't know if I ever see him like really going off. And I don't know. It's just and then Milwaukee, like, are we sure that they're not sitting guys on a back-to-back, or was it the blowout? We're not as worried about it.
I'm a little less worried about it looking at the game line and, all these guys, none of them, like, they all played like 25 to 30 minutes.
What is the game line for this one?
Here, I had them pulled up.
All these guys are projected probable right now for what it's worth.
Yeah.
So
they're all probable?
Like, nobody's questionable.
Yeah, if you see him projected, if you see him downgraded to questionable, then would be like, all it would take is 1, 2, and I'd be worried the entire team sits. But the market clearly doesn't think so. We got an 8-point spread here, so I think that does indicate a little bit of risk. Actually, that's lower than it was earlier. Like,
just in my head again.
If all these guys play, give me the Bucks -8 against this shitty Heat team.
Yeah, and these teams already got bad blood, anyways, because Miami always plays them tough and stuff like that. Bam bothers Giannis a little bit. I don't know. This game's definitely just a spot where I want to see who the starters are for one. Make sure these guys are in. It's still way before the next group of games, so we got time to make decisions. Just in general, though, I think I'm under on Miami. I really liked what Schlong said, though, about setting a rule. Some of my biggest hits in NBA have been doing that. Run my normal thing on SaberSim, but set it like max 3 early, guys, counting all 3 games. So you leave a lot of the dudes in with projections, or you could even say, give me 3, like min 2, max 3 of early guys. And all that does is it just puts you in a lane to have some random guys in the early one. And I don't know who's in that 20 max $3 tonight, but DraftKings ran an awesome 20. If anybody doesn't usually play 20 max, it's a great chance to play on SaberSim and take a chance on that because it's $3. I think it's $100,000 prize pool. That's huge for a $3 20 max. So perfect chance to get in there and mess with SaberSim and rules like this. 2 to 3 early guys, leave a bunch of ground for the late, and then once we get the news, run SaberSim late swap and see and honestly, we can maybe pull it up on playback for a minute, and I can show everyone kind of how the late swap features work once we get the news, because who knows what news we're going to get late, and it's almost All-Star break. There's nothing that says the Suns can't roll out Booker or Durant, or who knows what news we'll get late. It's All-Star week. We could get all kinds of stuff for these late games and early games for that matter.
Yeah, keep in mind too, some of the other news. Scoot Henderson is already questionable. Who knows if DeAndre Ayton wants to play basketball tonight? You never know with someone like him. It's just it's always a mess of a situation with that Portland team, and more news could easily come through there. Another thing you could do, Tony, which I don't mind doing sometimes, maybe you just make all the adjustments that Ant Edwards is out. Make them all right. Make them all on your end, and you don't even have to set that rule, and you'll likely get a lot of those guys. And then if it doesn't work out in your favor, once you get the news, re-upload whatever projections you use or whatever you do, and then don't have that upload in there, right? And it'll still allocate to all those other guys, but it'll naturally backload you if you adjust it, I think, properly. So that's the way you can go about it as well. Big T, any final thoughts with this game, or you want to move on?
I do that a ton now. You just said it, where that's what I'm going to do, honestly. When I run my numbers, I'm going to pull Ant out. All you got to do, the good part about using Saber Sim, all you got to do is make the adjustment. Like Mangone just said, it fixes it for you. You pop them back in, you bring your other guys down, and you just rerun it, and it's going to give you the good combos you need anyways. So I love that point that he brought up.
Yep, exactly. Let's move on. We're moving on to the good game, the Minnesota game. Bryce, obviously Minnesota is a big talking point right now with the Ant Edwards news. And like I said, Scoot could easily miss this game. That's another one that we're waiting on that piece of news. And who knows who these guys are going to sit, right? They sit guys out of nowhere all the time. So, Bryce, this game could be a really good one. How do you want to handle Minnesota and Portland?
Subscribe to the site and ask me in Discord later when we know who's playing. I'll try and run through a couple scenarios for you guys here, though. Assuming Scoop plays, I don't love the Portland guys quite as much. I think they're all playable, like Walker, Grant, Scoot himself, Simons, all playable. Now, if Scoot sits, who would you see starting for him? Like a Chris Murray, maybe. I really don't know who they'd go to. I need to see who the starter would be there, but they'd be a great play here.
They started the other day at point guard. They started Haggins was his name, and he got like 4 fouls in the first half, so he played 23 minutes. So he's a 3.6K guy. They could play a Murray more, so yeah. There's a lot of different routes they could go.
So my main point here is that even if you get Ant Edwards in and you're expecting some value, you can get it from other spots. Like Tony said, some of these other games, there's 2 other games tonight too. Like there are spots where some of these guys could sit and really good value could open up, period. So I like not boxing yourself into a corner early. If Ant sits, it's pretty much I'm going to play a fuck ton of Portland. That's not, and I'm going to make sure that I have room to do it. If Ant plays, I'm still going to play. I'm still going to play a bunch of Timberwolves. They're playing Portland. It's a really good matchup. The prices aren't egregious. Like if Ant's in, I think he could come in at reduced ownership because of the midday downgrade. And I don't think they're going to throw him out there before the All-Star break if he's playing to not actually play. So I kind of like the Minnesota guys regardless, but you got to love the value if he sits.
Yeah, and with it being close to the All-Star break too, and some of these teams mailing it in, some of these younger guys are going to play more. Another guy that they got in I think they either acquired him in a trade or something, but Delano Banton played a lot the other night when guys were missing. He's someone that could emerge if someone is out. He could be someone that gets a little bit more run at 3.4K. And we know he's a pretty good fantasy producer. I wouldn't be shocked if he started if Scoot was out. So just something else to think about, maybe some other piece of news that could pop up. But again, this is why you got to be in the Discord chat over at Run Pure Sports. Big T, Minnesota, Portland. I know we've talked about it a lot, but break it down how you're handling this one.
I can't believe Ashton Haggins plays in the NBA. First of all, he went to Kentucky and he was absolute cheeks at Kentucky. He sucked.
I played him the other day because I felt like the news fell my way pretty good. And I was tilted seeing him he got fouled so fast. He was so terrible. He could not.
I mean, he was terrible in college. And I think he missed a few games even just with soft stuff, injuries. But he did play 28 and 23 minutes the last 2 games. So, I mean, at 3,600, there's just options. And I know we keep saying the same stuff over and over, beating it down, but it's just the truth. Even if Minnesota goes the other way and Ant Edwards plays, I'm with Schlong where all these guys are still good plays. They're just not great must plays, but you can play them and have no issue. So many times on these slates, what happens when 2 early games blow out and all these early guys that are chalky are bust? And all of a sudden, you got the 3 late games under-owned. Even if the news doesn't break your way, you're still in great shape tournament-wise. So I mean, I know we just keep saying the same thing over and over with these late games, but say it goes that way and Scoot Henderson's out and maybe Portland sits another guy that we're not talking about. All of a sudden, these cheap guys are more than in play for them. So lots of options, but just in general in this game, I'm not going to like much from Portland, and I'm going to like all the Minnesota guys. I mean, Rudy Gobert, I don't love his game, but he's been good this year. He's 7,200 against Portland. He's had plenty of 50-point games and stuff at only 7,200. And Edwards, if he plays, is a great play against Portland. Cat's a great play, especially if Ant's out. All these cheaper guys. Conley's been good. I know they're talking about the back-to-back, but if he plays, I mean, he just had a 40-point game a couple games ago. So I love Minnesota. But like we said, we'll be on playback at 9:30, leading up to 10. We'll break it all down to you and what to do with the news. There's really no reason to break this game down until we have all the news, besides saying that we like it.
Here's a pretty good question, Big T. So Drew Carpenter asked, would you guys consider fading all three early games?
Absolutely. I do that. And the way to do that is just ignore them. Just literally pretend they don't exist. Hope that the games bust and just treat it as a 3-game slate. And just to be fair, you can do it the opposite way too. Pretend the late games don't. You can always do that on short slates. Don't do it on longer slates because there's more options. Short slates, though, all it takes is 2 blowouts in one game where the people don't go crazy, and all of a sudden you're in a lane by your own. In tournaments, the key is to get all the way to the top, like Schlong last night, 100K. He even made a bad pivot and still won 100K. Put yourself in those positions, and that's how you do it. You don't just get in there by just going in and just running naked Saber Sim. Don't make any changes, and just randomly you'll win those for sure. But you got to make a few things to get you into your own lane. And one thing you could, I'd rather play 1 or 2 early guys and then late, but you definitely can just cross them out and run the late games. Who knows? Maybe all these late games rule someone out and you just fall into just a total nut.
Yeah, here's another thing too. So what I like to do in Saber Sim or whatever optimizer you use, I like to go in and maybe run the teams by Xing off all those first 3 games and see what the projection drop off is from like the top team versus when you kick off all those games. I think that's an interesting way to look at it. And let's say Miami, let's say there's some good plays that do well. Like let's say there's a lot of busts, but Tyler Hero drops 40 DK points. Well, there's a good chance Tyler Hero is on a lot of the teams with some landmines, right? With guys that maybe played really bad on the Miami Heat, where you can get away with that. Like last night, one of my teams didn't have Victor Wembanyama. So what did I do? I swapped off of Walker Kessler and Draymond Green, which was a good combo, but I got on to Daniel Gafford, who basically like matched both of them combined. And he was 4% owned. Like it's a weird swap you can do, but it was one that helped me get towards, getting the cash line and have a really good team. It was a little bit of a projection drop off, but I thought the ownership percentage was worth it. So just weird things you can think about, Bryce. What do you think about in single entry, just fading the first 3 games? I don't think you need to, but I think you can get away with it.
My preferred route would be like Tony said, play like 1 to 3 guys, leave yourself like some flexibility.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just straight up fade it too. I mean, the 2 best totals are these 2 games we're about to talk about now, like by a long shot. So, you can easily make, even if Ant plays, like you can easily make a really good late team of just these 3 games. If even without them, if we want to move over to the Sacramento side, they have some really good value plays. Like I think Herter's a good value play. I think Monk's a good value play. I think Keegan Murray's a good value play. Like those guys are all like 5K. Like you throw them 5 in your team, and you still have like the ability to play a bunch of these studs late. So, yeah, I think it's totally viable.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, I mean, keep touching on those guys. Like Malik Monk at 5'8". That guy could definitely have a massive game for sure. So, gotta consider him. I know Harrison Barnes has been good. He's definitely died down a little bit, but I think people could get away with it at 4.4K. Phoenix doesn't have as much value, but of course, if you backloaded a bunch and you could go to a Nurkic or a Beal, I don't think it's the craziest idea. But what are some other plays you like in this game, Bryce?
Yeah, I mean, I like the Sacramento value and then the Phoenix spends. I think KD and Booker both under 10K. I probably prefer KD there, but it's a real nice spot for both of them. I think I would prefer the Lakers guys, LeBron and AD, to the Suns guys here, but it's pretty close. I mean, even Brad Beal's is pretty solid play at 7-3. And, if you mix in some of the Sacramento value, you get yourself a nice little game stack here. I didn't even touch on Sabonis and Fox, who I think will go super under-owned, especially if Ant plays, like there's going to be less value. So people will get down to the Sacramento value and get off the Sacramento studs. So I think that's a nice way to get yourself different as well.
All right, Tony, what about you this game? Obviously, it's a pretty good one, Sacramento and Phoenix. Sacramento is one of those teams we do not mind targeting. Phoenix, yeah, it's a little bit more crowded, but I think overall there's some value plays and there's some spend-ups that you definitely can consider.
Yep, and some of these Phoenix guys do good every game. I mean, you have studs. I actually like Bradley Beal's price point a ton because obviously you got Durant and Booker like the main attractions, but they're 2K, over 2K more, 2,500 more than Beal. And they do somewhat share like the ball. Some games Beal takes over. I mean, he's got a bunch of big games lately. And I know Booker missed one or two of those games. I get it, but still 59, 48, 45. I mean, those are big numbers for 7,300. And Sacramento has always struggled to defend shooting guards like Bradley Beal and Devin Booker, guys like that. They struggle to defend them. They just do. They always have. For the last 10 to 15 years, they've struggled against that position. I like Phoenix a lot. Again, it's the same point we make, but there's so many good plays in these late games. Nurkic, you never know when Nurkic is going to have blow-up spots. Grayson Allen's had some big games at 5,100. There's just a lot of ways you can go in these late games. And then Sacramento, I mean, basically every guy they play looks underpriced to me. Sabonis looks cheap. Fox looks cheap. The middle tier guys, Monk has been amazing. A bunch of 40-point games for Monk, and he's 5,800. I mean, and you got these Kentucky guys too going against each other. Monk and Fox versus Booker. I mean, they like playing against each other. You got a lot of narratives you can play into. Herder's cheap. Even like Davion Mitchell, say we get none of the value we think. Everyone's in. Nothing falls our way. Even guys like Davion Mitchell at 3,200, he's played 20 minutes in 3 straight games, 23, 20, 20. I mean, he was just a top talent like 2 years ago. They're not just going to totally give up on him. His minutes have been good. I don't like him if all the value falls our way, but if you had to, you can easily play a Davion Mitchell. He's going to have to guard these guards. They're going to play him more tonight. Like, how many minutes? Like, these sites have him projected for like 16. I think he plays like 23, 24 tonight because they're going to need him to guard Booker and Beal. They just are, which is going to bring down guys like Herder now that I talk it through more. I would rather play Davion at 3,200 than Herder at 5,100 because Herder's not going to be able to guard anybody, and they're going to need some guard out there. So I actually like Davion Mitchell at 3,200. I think he's pretty – I don't know which one's the 10:30 game is probably the showdown, I assume. But I like him, and I like this game a lot.
Yeah, also on top of that, Trey Lyles is questionable. What if Trey Lyles misses? I mean, that's another bench guy that maybe some minutes could get allocated towards some of these other options. So, Bryce, you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, I was just saying I love Davion Mitchell in general. He's one. If I can ever play him, he's one of my favorite plays. I think it's a good point. I didn't even realize he was playing that many minutes. To be honest, I didn't look close enough at the Sacramento rotation.
He's been playing a lot.
It trended up. It trended upward a little bit recently, I think. You have to look and see if it was blowout and such, but yeah.
Even if it was, though, I mean, he's still 3,200, and even the games when he didn't get 20, he's getting 16. I mean, he's 3,200. It's just not that. They're going to need him to guard. Yeah, and Falik brings up a good point, that Vezenkov. He was out. I think that is big news to why he was getting more run.
Yeah,
it just shortens the rotation.
Yep, I agree. Also, another thing, Tony, I wanted to mention, and I think the ownership gap might even be larger than this, but I pulled up SaberSim. I looked at our ownership. Tyler Hero is projected for 35% ownership. Bradley Beal at 12%. If I offered 3-1 odds on Bradley Beal to outscore Tyler Hero, you'd jump on that, right?
I would bet that every day of the week at 3-1 odds.
Yeah, even in this situation. So I definitely think you're bringing up good points with that. We got 7 minutes till normally our end of the show, but we got.
I think Hero's going to be even way higher owned than that too, and I think Beal's going to be lower. I think we might get like 5-1 on that bet.
I agree. I think it's even going to be like that, especially in single entry stuff, right? Like even those, like those
Hero in single entry, Hero has to be like 50%. He has to be.
I agree. But
and no one's going to play Bradley Beal, so I mean, it might even be more crazy than we think.
It's going to be very high for sure.
And I get it. Like his role is boosted. Milwaukee struggles from the perimeter to guard. I get it. But the flip side is Bradley Beal's still really good at basketball, and he can easily outscore Tyler Hero. There's no question about it.
Yeah, by the way, Kevin Fallick is agreeing with you, Tony. Davion Mitchell is probably being inserted in the chorus right now as we speak, or maybe Kevin is waiting on some Pistons. He said he's been on some Pistons lately, so we'll have to see. But they are a little bit healthier for sure. We're on the last game, though. We're going to give out those plays of the day, but if you guys could please hit that like, we would appreciate it. We'll give out the plays of the day no matter what, but we got 503 of you watching, so we'd appreciate the like. But last game of the slate, which you guys will be talking about on playback as well, Detroit and the Lakers. AD and LeBron, they're questionable, but they're always questionable. Let's go over to you, Bryce. Detroit, they won the slate the other day. I think they are way more healthier. They made some trades too. Mr. Fontecchio's been playing pretty well and been getting some really good run for this Pistons team. What have you noticed since they made some trades? Do you think there's some opportunity here with Detroit and the Lakers?
Yeah, I really like this game, especially if Detroit can keep it close. Neither of these teams plays any defense. Touch on Detroit first and give some showdown notes here. I like Detroit in general as like value plays. I think my showdown captains would be limited to like a smaller amount of Cunningham, and then LeBron and AD would be the only three captains I play here in showdown. Don't love Durant in this matchup. Ivy, I don't like as much. I kind of like these cheaper guys. Fontecchio, I mean, if he's going to play, 30-some minutes a game, he's a guy who likes to get his shot up. I like that value play a decent amount here. Marcus Sasser, I don't love him simply because, like, when they're healthier, I think it's tough. But, if he plays well off the bench, you could see him get some extended run. Ausar Thompson, it seems too cheap to me for his upside. You've seen him have some big games at like 6 and 7K this year. So I don't think he's the worst play here, 4-9. And then going over to the Lakers value I don't really like. I'm just going to come out and say it. It's pretty much studs or busts for me here. Do you know if Dinwiddie is available to play? So I think Dinwiddie hurts like a D'Angelo Russell or an Austin Reeves, like way more than like LeBron and AD. Like he's not a high usage guy. He's not going to take away from them, but like he could take some rotation minutes away from those guys. Or, you could even see the Lakers just run like the small ball team of like Anthony Davis, LeBron, Russell, Reeves, and Dinwiddie into the ground if it works. Like these guys need wins. They need to make the playoffs. I love Brow. I think he's one of my favorite plays of the slate, if not my favorite. I think it could be a huge stock game from him here, setting up against Detroit, and just really like him as a solid play here at like 10K. And then, he's super expensive on FanDuel. It's kind of like the Wemby shit last night, where you get a guy with massive stock upside who's like way more expensive on FanDuel than DraftKings, and no one plays him on FanDuel. I think that's an interesting like dynamic there. And then LeBron at 9.6, Tony's guy. He was hanging out with him at the All-Star game, or at the Super Bowl. Sorry, I'm getting ready for the NBA All-Star game myself. But yeah, LeBron at 9.6 is a really solid play.
Yeah, definitely some good opportunity here. Whenever any team is playing the Pistons, right? We always talk about this. There are certain teams, whenever they're on the slate, we have to consider targeting them. Of course, we have to consider some of these Lakers options. I like the AD call. Dinwiddie, I agree with some of the stuff you said too. I think that makes a lot of sense that it's going to hurt some of those guys. Big team, we'll go over to you. The Detroit Pistons. I do think Fontecchio, like, not the worst value play if, you run into not getting news going your way. I think he's not the craziest guy that you can get to. And there are options here. So how are you handling Detroit and the Lakers?
Yeah, again, it kind of falls in the late game bucket, but I'm not 100% sure that AD and LeBron play too. Just falling into that same thing where they play another scrub team tomorrow. I forget who without actually looking at it, but it's a scrub team.
They play Utah.
Yeah, so a couple scrub matchups back to back. I wouldn't be totally shocked if they could do it tomorrow too, because tomorrow's in Utah. Now that I'm looking, that's a perfect sit spot where you play them tonight, you sit them, and then they got a break. You could even leave them, do the Jokic move, leave them in LA, and give them a nice rest going into the All-Star stuff. But I'm just saying, just to throw it out there, it falls into our bucket where wait for the news anyways late. If they're in, though, I like AD and LeBron a decent amount tonight. I think they're both in a good spot versus Detroit. No defense. I agree with Schlong's point. With Dinwiddie there, I mean, you can't play D'Lo or Austin Reeves at those prices. 7,300 and 7K. Literally no way you can play those price points with Dinwiddie there and the two studs. And you just can't play the cheaper guys, too. So, honestly, if they have everyone in, it's maybe the easiest team of the entire slate in the way that you're just playing the two studs. And even in Showdown, I haven't looked at all the prices, but I would say play AD and LeBron and all Detroit guys with them. And in the captain, like Slong said, AD, LeBron, Cade, no one else in the captain, and just run it. And I might do it, honestly, as I'm talking it through. We're going to be on playback. I might as well put some Showdown in for that. But so I think the Lakers are very, very easy. If somehow AD or LeBron's out, that changes things a lot. But let's assume they're in for now and just those two. And Detroit has been playing better basketball. They got a couple wins. The Lakers play no defense outside of AD, who is a great inside defender, which would take me off of Duran. He's been a stud. He's crushed, but AD is just a beast. I mean, he's just a beast inside. So it would be Cade Cunningham. And my favorite play, though, Jaden Ivey. He's finally hit the ground running a little bit with playing a bunch of minutes, 38, 40, 48 obviously was overtime, but still 36, 35, bunch of minutes. He had a 55-point game in there. I just like him against a team like the Lakers. I think he's got a bunch of upside at that price point. I don't like Fontecchio as much as other people do. He has been good, but don't love him in this spot. So mainly just Cunningham and Ivy and the two studs from the Lakers. But it all depends on what we get from those other two games, too. If the news doesn't break our way, maybe I expand my player pool even more. And again, we'll be on playback tonight. No reason to make decisions now. Let's just see what happens, and then we'll break it down more on that show.
Yep. So be sure to check out the playbook. Subscribe to the channel. You'll get notified when it goes live. So definitely do that so you can check out the playback. But, yeah, not a bad game to get exposure to. The one guy I will say, big team, maybe you should totally not ignore is Rui Hachimura on Showdown. I think he could be interesting just because that Detroit matchup for big men, and he could definitely put up fantasy points pretty quick. But, yeah, I like a lot of the takes you had there for the Showdown stuff.
I like that Rui call. That's a good call. He's played a bunch of minutes lately, too.
Yep, agreed. And Mike was asking in the chat about Rui, too. I don't love him.
Dinwiddie doesn't impact him. He's one of the guys. Yeah. Dinwiddie coming in doesn't impact at all. He kills D'Lo and Austin Reeves and the cheaper guards like Christie or those bums they were playing. So it doesn't hurt Rui though.
Yeah, again, if the news doesn't fall your way, I mean, it's Detroit. Rui isn't the craziest idea if things don't fall your way.
I like the Rui call.
Cool. Well, let's move on. Let's go to the plays of the day for the people. So, Bryce, I'll go to you first. Mr. 100K man who won yesterday. Who do you got? Who is your play of the day?
I'm going to go with Anthony Davis. Same spot as Wemby last night, essentially. Super high stock upside game, underpriced on DraftKings, overpriced on FanDuel. Running more on FanDuel tonight than DraftKings because, I won the monster last night, so I got to try and run it back again tonight for the 2P. So give me Anthony Davis's stock upside at like super low ownership on FanDuel. What's he projected on FanDuel? I think it's under 10%. On a 6-game slate, I don't think he should ever be under 10% here.
Yeah, I like the AD call a lot. Big T, you can go next. Who do you got? Who is the workbench play of the day?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to go good with everything we've said on the show just because we want late guys. Schlong gives AD. I like these Detroit guys at a lower ownership. So it was down to Cade or Ivy for me. I'm actually going to go Cade, though. I've watched these Lakers defend all year. They can't defend, especially guys that get to the rim. And I think Cade will be able to get to the rim. I can see him even having a triple-double. I don't know what his odds are of that tonight, but I'm guessing you can get pretty good odds on that. I think Cade has a monster game tonight, and it goes perfect with AD, goes perfect with our late news where we can pivot on to some cheap Minnesota guys. I love it. So give me Cade Cunningham for my play of the night.
All right, well, you're arm in arm with Mark K.
Yeah, so, Mark K, let's go.
There you go. Cade Cunningham's your play of the day. I'll give you a little bit of a value in that Kings game. I think you'll like it a little bit, Tony. It's not your Davion Mitchell call, but it's Malik Monk. When you play a team like the Phoenix Suns, you need firepower, right? You need guys that are filling up the bucket, and that is Malik Monk. He plays that role well. He's been playing a little bit better, too. I know he went through a really rough stretch, but, yeah. That's what it is for me. I'm going with Malik Monk as my play of the day.
Careful, Mangone. You were yawning during my play of the day, Alex said. That hurts my feelings a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little tired today. I don't have as much caffeine in me as normal, so a little tired.
Duncan, you had a line at Duncan?
No, I hit Duncan only. I the past weekend I was pounding a lot of caffeine in me because I was on the mountain. I was pretty needed some caffeine to get me through the day, but Falik. What?
Are you getting those Dunkin' Donuts tracksuits? I know Tony didn't see this because he was at the game.
Was
that was probably like the Dofus commercial. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like Tom Brady, Affleck, and Matt Damon.
I gotta look it up now.
And you haven't seen it? You gotta look it up.
They sold out within like a minute.
Yeah,
Dunkin' Donuts tracksuits. I'm about to look it up right now.
They're
fire.
They're epic. I wanted to get one, but they sold out too quick. I was like on my way back from the gym, and I pulled up my phone, and I was like, "Oh."
And Affleck was in it.
Yep.
Yeah, it was like them three, and they sold out within a minute. So I get why you didn't get it.
Yeah, they're called like Dunk Kings or whatever. Also, I saw
Dunk Kings.
I saw Darren Ravel was wearing it today, and I was like, maybe I need
sold
to
out in 19 minutes.
What?
They sold out in 19 minutes. I'm looking now. That's funny.
Yeah.
If you just put stuff out that's just crazy enough, then they'll sell even more than if it wasn't. It's funny.
Yeah, we need to get ourselves some Rum Pure Sports Dunk Kings. Maybe we'll have to draw those up for the people. Maybe they'll sell out like crazy. But yeah, they're definitely dope. I want to get one, but I'll have to wait for the next time, I guess. So, but yeah, Tony, final thoughts, and again, let the people know that you're going to be on playback today.
Yep, I'm excited for this slate too because my initial reactions: play one or two guys early, jam the late games. Feel even better after talking to you guys through the slate because I think a lot of guys are going to be heavy on Miami. Say everyone plays Miami, 3 guys. I'd rather have 1 Miami or 2 at most. So I'm just going to set some rules in SaberSim, and I'm going to hope I get a lot of these late games. And let's hope one of us or one of the people watching can be like Brittany last week and get all the way to the finish line with a nice big W tonight.
That'll be a fun playback sweat too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You might have to have an extended one with the people when your guys start to pop off at 10 o'clock and, you get the setup that you want.
I like that. Let's make that a commitment. Let's get some sweats in there and let's bring it all the way home.
Yep, let's make it happen. Mallory said Cam Thomas was out. It's not Cam Thomas. It's Cam Johnson. He corrected himself too, but so no one panics. It's still Cam Thomas. We already knew that news, but that is going to wrap it up for us. Thanks a lot for joining us here on the Run Pure Sports NBA Hardwood Show. For me, Mangone, Bryce, and Big T. We will see you guys later.